What's going on? Coach Luca here from Vigor Ground Fitness and Performance. I had to get that out really fast because I want to get to the point. All right, so we're going to troubleshoot the lunge, right? Now, obviously, you have a lot of different lunges, reverse lunge, forward lunge. You got lateral lunges, but we're going to keep it forward or reverse, mostly a reverse lunge and the regression that you can and should take to correct what's going on. Now, the reason why I'm shooting this is because I get a lot of people asking me about like the lunge and how they have issues with insert blank, adductor, hip, low back, right? A lot of different things that will start bugging people when they're doing lunges. Now, there's obviously reasons why, because it's very simple to think, well, you know, it's simple to do a lunge. And if you look at it from the front, I can make this look like, oh, it's pretty good. But right now, there's quite a few things going on that shouldn't be. And that's what I'm going to break down. So first, I'm going to break down mistake, or I should say, one of the main things that we look for and how you can regress to 90 static lunge is when I do this reverse lunge, right? Seems like I'm doing pretty good here, but if you see my trunk, I'm hyperextending. My abs, my core is not tight, right? So when I'm stepping back here, I'm getting a lot of range of motion from my back, okay? So to fix this, a lot of the fixes are going to come from regressing the reverse lunge, and this is what we check first to see if it can be done the right way, is a 90-90 static lunge. Now, the reason why we say 90-90, because you'll see these angles, a 90 and 90, right? This will fix a lot of things. Why? Because at the beginning, you can see right now, I'm very extended. So if I breathe all my air out, now you can see my rib cage being in this good neutral position with my spine, right? So when I go down, I automatically, once I do this, I'm feeling a stretch in my hip flexor, okay? So when I go down, directly down, this actually becomes, if I'm nice and aligned, a hip flexor stretch. And because most people are tight in their hip flexors here, the tendency is to compensate, because now it feels better, right? So, but now we're taking core out of it. This hip is not in a good position. The actual femur is not in a good position, and it can aggravate a lot of things. So just training from this 90-90 static lunge position, rib cage down, neck nice and packed, this becomes very, very challenging, not just for as far as the weight goes, but constantly opening up this hip flexor, okay? So that's one of the troubleshoots that I look at first, is the positioning of the trunk, okay, which is one of the things that most people have an issue with. Number two will be stepping, and these are not in no particular order, but number two, you'll see stepping to the side a lot here, okay, which creates a lot of different things. You can see either rotation of the hips, you will see the hips turn out, okay, and that can be for many reasons. Like I said, it can be tight hips, tight adductors, trying to create this range of motion because you can't step directly back, right? If hips are tight, I might go out here, okay? Now, for that, once again, you know, the FMS test, that static lunge, we go into this 90-90 position. The great thing about it is that you can check exactly where you are in lines. And you'll see a lot of people might get a little wobbly and unstable, which means you can go just a little bit wider. But now we can train this pattern and get them straight down and straight back up, okay? What you'll also see, as you can't see here, is that this knee will turn out, okay? So we're not aligning the hip. So now you can see this rotation of the hip. So this is another, if I roll up my leg, you'll see how it's kind of turned out instead of facing directly down. Once again, being tight. So a great way to kind of ingrain the movement pattern, right, to get people to understand and feel where they are, is to get them into this static lunge position, right? Because now we can get them aligned and just doing this staying tight. I like to do a goblet position with either the dumbbell or just body weight at first, but now they'll start feeling where they should be. Okay, straight up and straight down. So we have this neutral spine without rotation, without the knees popping out. And that in itself tends to fix quite a lot of issues when there's I would say any type of groin, adductor pain, or even low back, because we're taking that low back out of extension. Okay? The next thing that is connected to this is to look at the foot. Right? With many people, what you'll see is when you step back, that the foot, you might see that knee alignment, but in the back, see the foot rotating. Okay? Once again, it's just a compensation, because as soon as we align it, it also aligns knee, hip, so ankle, knee, and hip. And you'll see a big difference in just where you are here. Okay? So sometimes it's the analogy of if somebody is rolling to the outside, and you'll see this quite a lot, here, push through the big toe. So staying on the big toe. Now, if there's a big toe issue and a mobility issue, so somebody doesn't have great mobility in their big toe, that's something that needs to get worked on, right? Having mobilizations, whether it's seeing a PT, whether it's doing Z-health drills, and things of that nature, right? But it's a great analogy to, or should I say cue, to go step through that big toe. Okay? So everything, as you can see, is kind of being connected on this. Okay? Another thing that tends to happen with lunges that may not seem like a big deal is this. Okay? Or even where just one side, you'll start seeing the dumbbells turn, because we have this tendency to grip on the stronger part of our wrist, right? So whether it's this bottom part, whether it's the top one, usually you'll see just certain fingers just letting go. And it doesn't only, so the thing is, as soon as I stop squeezing hard on the dumbbells, now I'm creating tension in my lats, in my abs. As soon as I let go, my shoulders slump, my abs usually get disengaged, forward head posture. So now I'm lunging, guess what's going to happen? I'm going to go into that extension, forward head posture. So very important. You'll see this all the time. If I grab, because we're also doing grip work, especially if we're doing, like I said, dumbbell lunges or holding anything. If it's on your back or if we're doing sandbags or something like that, this doesn't come into play. But with the dumbbell lunges, you've got to crush and keep crushing the whole time that you're doing this. Okay? And it keeps a good position. So making sure, it seems like a small thing, but everything's connected. All right? The next two are going to be a long and a short. With people that have like really good flexibility, you'll see a kind of like an extremely long step back in a lunge. So here, right? Which then becomes very difficult for you to not hyperextend. Okay? So knowing where you're going to lunge back to so that you can keep that rib cage down, those abs nice and tight, and then driving through. And you can see how my hips and shoulders stay connected. If I say go super far back, this would actually be my neutral position, not upright. Or you'll see a very short step back, right, where the heel comes off the ground, which means that we don't have enough ankle mobility and dorsiflexion, and it can beat up the knee somewhat. Now, the misconception is that the knee should never go in front of the toe in a lunge. This isn't true. If you have good mobility in your ankles, you got good posture, you're still driving up through the heel, that's perfectly fine, because it ends up being just like a squat. If you do a good front squat, my knees are falling, if you have good mobility, in front of your toes. So there's no problem there. The problem becomes if I don't have good movement, and now I'm stepping, the heel's coming off the ground, or I'm having to, like I said, really tuck under, right? So those are the big problems when we come to lunging. If we can get and start and regress lunging movements to a 90-90 position so we can have alignment, and if we look from the side so that we have our rib cage down, tuck chin, and start working that 90-90 position. So when people get stronger there and they can start controlling that, we'll take them to a reverse lunge, then to a forward lunge. And not only that, starting off body weight, then adding weight into a goblet position. So whether it's a dumbbell or a kettlebell, because now we're working this, right, anterior core stability, and it's easier to keep these positions and stay nice and tight. Because if you can't, that was a little high pitch right there, damn. If you can't control, I would say, core, and you're adding a more complex movement or putting a barbell on your back, but you're weak here, you're going to get driven into extension right off the bat. Okay, so I love dumbbell, kettlebell, sandbag that keeps me nice and neutral and helps with that to basically strengthen. Okay, so those are just some of the things that you'll see in a lunge that you can tweak, correct, and watch how you get much more out of it. Not only are you going to improve mobility in the hips, glutes will be more engaged, your core will be in a better position, right? It'll prevent nagging injuries and get you more out of the exercise that you're doing. See you next time. Lucas out.